And thank you very much for joining me here today. I'm Don Ma. I appreciate you tuning in. Big things, it seems like, are happening in China, and it's not all for the good. People's perspective on the country is taking a U-turn, if you will, and the country is losing money. Now, if you remember, there was a time when people were throwing money at China, but now things are very different. In fact, the opposite is true. Foreign investors appear to be fleeing the country as new numbers reveal that foreign direct investment in China has dropped to a 30-year low, and that is extremely significant here. Now, according to the State Administration of Foreign Exchange, China's direct foreign investment has fallen 80%. Think about that, 80% since 2022. The FDI totaled just $33 billion last year. Now, if you compare that to 2021, it's a huge difference. In 2021, foreign direct investment totaled $344 billion. Just think about that. Beijing has been struggling to reignite the country's economy after the pandemic. The country is dealing with a property crisis, weak domestic demand, and low investor confidence. And on top of all that, foreign companies have been scaling down their operations in China after the Chinese regime put a focus on national security and started cracking down on spying. And then companies are concerned as well over how this policy and others will be enforced. And with companies pulling out and a shrinking labor force, China's economy could suffer even more in the medium and long term. But besides that, it seems like tourism revenues in China during the Lunar New Year holidays that ended on Saturday surged by 47% year on year and surpassed 2019 levels. And this is thanks to domestic travel and a longer than usual break. And this also could be because Chinese people maybe just don't have money to go abroad, so not much choice here. Take a look at this report.
The massive crowds in Shanghai railway station ahead of this year's Spring Festival holiday speak to what Chinese officials said on Sunday ended up being a surge in travel spending over the Lunar New Year to levels even higher than before COVID, as the Chinese economy loses steam. The holiday is the busiest yearly travel migration in the world. And by the end of the 8-day span on Saturday, 474 million tourist trips were made, up 34% from the same time a year ago. Millions of migrants have since returned to major cities like Shanghai or Beijing after reuniting with family in hometowns.
It was really crowded this year. It felt like it was the first time for me to experience the Spring Festival rush thoroughly.
Chinese officials say not only was tourism spending up by around 50% over 2023, it was up 7% over this time in 2019 before the pandemic. Revenue per trip, though, has remained below pre-COVID levels. One of the most popular activities during this year's holiday was watching films. China's box office revenue exceeded over $1 billion over the 8 days, a new record high, as China grapples with multiple challenges, including a plunging stock market and declining property values, and as consumer prices fell furthest since the 2009 recession last month. It's pushing authorities to cut interest rates in an attempt to spark growth and revive an economy low on confidence and facing spiraling deflation.
Now back here in the US, OpenAI has wrapped up a new deal that has nearly tripled its value in less than 10 months. Sources say the San Francisco-based company is now valued at $80 billion or more. According to New York Times report, under the deal, the company will sell existing shares in a so-called tender offer led by the venture firm Thrive Capital. Employees will be able to cash out their shares in the company rather than doing a traditional funding round that would raise money for business operations. Now, according to data trackers, OpenAI is now one of the most valuable tech startups behind Chinese-based ByteDance and SpaceX. No comment on the deal from OpenAI or Thrive. And Warren Buffett-backed U.S. consumer bank Capital One seems like planning to acquire U.S. credit card issuer Discover Financial Services in an all-stock transaction valued at $35 billion. And this is to create a global payments giant, this company said on Monday. Here's the report.
Shoppers worldwide may soon get a new option for how they pay. U.S. bank Capital One said Monday it is buying credit card issuer Discover Financial for just over $35 billion. The The deal is meant to create a global payments giant that can better compete with bigger rivals like Visa and MasterCard. It would combine two of the largest credit card companies in the US, putting it head-to-head with major players like Citigroup. But the transaction will also create the sixth largest US bank by assets and is sure to attract scrutiny from watchdogs. Some Democrat politicians are strongly opposed to bank consolidation, arguing it hurts consumers. Credit card fees are also a hot topic, with strict new rules proposed by regulators. The two companies say they expect the agreement to generate $2.7 billion in savings through cost-cutting and other measures. Despite the scrutiny, Capital One says it expects the deal to be approved by early next year at the latest. The bank is backed by investors including Warren Buffett and is currently the number 4 player in the U.S. credit card market.
And the Biden administration is set to ease proposed yearly requirements through 2030 of its sweeping plan to aggressively cut tailpipe emissions, and as well as ramping up electric vehicle sales. Here's more.
Car makers may not have to go green quite so fast in the U.S. Reuters sources say the Biden administration is set to water down tough targets set for cutting emissions. Last year, the Environmental Protection Agency had proposed requiring a 56% reduction in new vehicle emissions by 2032, and automakers would have been required to aim for 60% of their sales being electric vehicles by 2030. Those proposals were met with pushback from big firms as well as labor unions. A trade body representing General Motors, Ford, and other giants called the targets neither reasonable nor achievable. The Union of Auto Workers called for the measures to be phased in more gradually. It argues that the infrastructure is not in place for the mass adoption of EVs, which it says are also still too costly for many consumers. Washington appears to have listened. The Reuters sources say the EPA will now slow the pace of new emissions requirements. They say its new proposals could be made public as soon as next month. Environmental rules have emerged as a political battleground, with former Republican President Donald Trump arguing that green targets threaten auto industry jobs. Even so, the UAW has recently endorsed Joe Biden for this year's presidential election.
Now it looks like predictions of a first quarter rate cut by the Federal Reserve have evaporated. But what does higher for longer interest rates mean for businesses? Let's take a look at that. An economist told CNN that larger companies will fare better with higher interest rates sticking around. Bigger companies can weather more challenging environments since they tended to have more buffer room, larger capital stock, and larger reserves. Now, on the other hand, small businesses do better in a growing economy when people are more willing to take risks. The economist sees that this disparity could lead to more opportunities for big companies to buy little ones. But she notes that higher rate environments does indeed squeeze everyone. And the U.S. government is awarding $1.5 billion to Global Foundries, it's a chip maker, to expand semiconductor production. The Biden administration said yesterday in a bid to strengthen domestic supply chains. Here's the details.
The US government is awarding $1.5 billion to chipmaker Global Foundries in a bid to boost domestic semiconductor production. That's according to the Biden administration on Monday. Global Foundries, the world's third largest contract chipmaker, will build a new manufacturing facility in Malta, New York, as well as expand existing operations there and in Burlington, Vermont, according to a preliminary agreement with the Commerce Department. The grant will be accompanied by $1.6 billion in available loans, with the funding expected to generate $12.5 billion in overall potential investment across the two states. Biden administration officials said the projects, funded under the CHIPS and Science Act, would generate more than 10,000 jobs over a decade. The chips, as small as a fingernail, are used in a whole host of fields, including satellite and space communications, and the defense industry, officials said. That's as well as in everyday applications such as blind spot detection and collision warnings in cars and electric vehicles, along with Wi-Fi and cellular connections. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo told reporters that Global Foundries semiconductors are, quote, essential chips to our national security. She added that Malta's facility will now provide supplies to General Motors, helping to combat chip shortages that kept millions of cars from being manufactured during the global health crisis. According to Raimondo, this is the government's third chips announcement, and her department plans to make several imminent funding awards from the government's $39 billion programme to expand semiconductor manufacturing.
Meanwhile, Chinese-based TikTok is officially under investigation by the European Union. The bloc is looking into whether the social media company is doing enough to protect children. The formal investigation will determine whether TikTok is violating the bloc's strict Digital Services Act, which, by the way, requires social media companies to safeguard minors and reduce risks of becoming addicted to content. And the EU will be focusing on TikTok's systems in place, including its algorithm that might stimulate addiction, as well as its age verification tools. A TikTok spokesperson said it has pioneered features to protect teens and keep kids under 13 off the platform, and it looks forward to explaining this work to the commission. Now, it seems like Donald Trump has ventured into the sneakers business, making an appearance at a sneaker convention. NTD's Sean Marshall has more on that.
Donald Trump launched his own line of sneakers on Saturday, February 17th, at SneakerCon, a convention for sneaker fans in Philadelphia.
But we have lines going all around the block. They're going all around this block. They've never seen anything like this one.
A gold-colored high top that is listed on GetTrumpSneakers.com for $399 pre-order, although now listed as sold out.
I just want to tell you, I've wanted to do this for a long time. I have some incredible people that work with me on things, and they came up with this, and this is something I've been talking about for 12 years, 13 years, and I think it's going to be a big success.
Resellers on eBay didn't wait a long time in attempting to sell the shoes for thousands of dollars before they even have the sneakers in hand, noting on the listings that they have only pre-ordered them so far. At the sneaker event, Russian CEO Roman Sharf, the founder of luxury watch dealer Luxury Bazaar, walked away with a autographed pair of Trump's golden sneakers, which Trump truthed out a video of on Truth Social.
And how much did you pay for those?
$9,000 the bidding end of that.
You bid $9,000?
Well, it was an auction, so it kept going and going and going. I wasn't going to stop until I won them, so.
Really?
The Trump shoe line also includes a low-top style in either T-Red or POTUS White, both with a golden 45 on the side, which sells for $199.
A great honor to be invited. It's a slightly different audience than I'm used to, but I love this audience.
Sean Marshall, NTD News.
Now, there may be a bit of not so good news if you're a frequent flyer, because checking a bag on American Airlines is now more expensive than other major U.S. airlines. The first checked bag on most flights will now cost $40 for customers who don't prepay online and $35 for customers who do. Now, previously, the price was $30 for both methods. American has also hiked the price of a second checked bag from $40 to $45. And the changes are now in effect for future flights. American's biggest rival, Delta and United, both charge $30 for the first bag and $40 for the second on similar routes. And Nintendo shares fell 6% on Monday after reports by Games Media and Bloomberg that its next generation console will be delayed until early 2025. Take a look at this.
Nintendo stock tumbled over 6% in early trades on Monday. The slide came after media reports that a replacement for its aging Switch console will be delayed. A new device had been expected later this year, but now reportedly won't come until 2025. The Switch has been a massive hit for Nintendo. Earlier this month, the firm even raised its sales outlook for the console. Its life cycle has been extended by a string of hit games, including last year's new Legend of Zelda title. But it's coming up to 8 years on the market and is widely seen as in need of an update. Nintendo has never revealed its plans for a successor, beyond saying that it is always working on new hardware and software. Last week, Japanese rival Sony slashed sales forecasts for its PlayStation 5 console. That followed weaker than expected sales over the holiday shopping season.
Meanwhile, Amazon is the latest company to join SpaceX and Trader Joe's in arguing that the U.S. National Labor Board's enforcement proceedings are unconstitutional. Here's more on that.
It is a nearly 90-year-old independent federal agency whose mission is to protect workers' rights. But lately, the U.S. National Labor Relations Board is also working to protect itself. This week, Amazon, currently embroiled in a case with the NLRB, became the latest company to claim the agency's in-house enforcement proceedings violate the U.S. Constitution. Elon Musk's rocket maker SpaceX and grocery chain Trader Joe's have made similar allegations. In a filing, Amazon said specifically that it plans to argue that the NLRB's unique structure violates the online retail giant's right to a jury trial. Amazon has been accused of illegally retaliating against workers at a warehouse in the New York City borough of Staten Island, where employees voted to unionize in 2022. Amazon, which has faced more than 250 NLRB complaints alleging unlawful labor practices across the country in recent years, has denied wrongdoing. SpaceX made similar claims in a lawsuit filed last month, one day after the Labor Board accused the company of firing 8 engineers for criticizing Musk in a letter to company executives. Trader Joe's raised the arguments later in January at a hearing in an NLRB case, and 2 Starbucks baristas seeking to dissolve their unions have challenged the board's structure in separate lawsuits. An NLRB spokeswoman declined to comment. At least one union lawyer, who works with both Amazon and Trader Joe's employees, is worried, telling Reuters that the growing number of challenges to the NLRB make it more likely the issue will reach the U.S. Supreme Court, whose conservative majority has signaled its skepticism of other U.S. agencies' in-house proceedings.
Now, does the winter weather have you dreaming of getting away? Because now it seems like it's a great time to book a cruise and score some big deals. Here's what you need to know.
It's time to start cruising for a deal. Major cruise companies are offering big discounts right now. It's known as wave season.
Wave season is the time of year when the entire cruise industry goes on sale.
Wave season starts in January and runs through the beginning of March. You don't need to travel right now to score the deals. Travel expert Emily Kaufman says you can book a cruise all the way through 2025. You just need to book the trip now. So, what kind of deals are we seeing?
They've got added value offers with things like 2-for-1 sailing, cabin category upgrades, credits to be used on board.
From river cruises to luxury ships, anywhere around the world, this is the time to score discounts. Right now, Norwegian Cruise Lines is offering a 2-for-1 deal. That's on many of their cruises, even the European destinations. They're also offering a savings of $1,000 for free 3rd or 4th guests on select dates. Royal Caribbean Cruises boast up to $700 off, plus 60% off a second guest, and kids sail for free. MSC is offering 40% off and up to $400 onboard credit, but that deal only lasts until February 20th. Kaufman says cruises are a great way for families to save.
For one price, you get your accommodations, your meals, your activities on board.
If you are booking for a future trip, keep in mind that prices will be even cheaper if you book during an off-season time. And of course, you do have to factor in flights if you have to fly to the port city where the cruise departs from.
Now, we've all experienced this. You start a project, but you can't seem to concentrate enough to get it done. In fact, anyone can get distracted, but there are ways to help your brain focus on the task ahead of you. Here's more with a health expert on how to help your brain avoid distraction.
It can happen when you're tired or because you're juggling too much. If you get easily distracted, you're not alone.
Our brains need gas in the tank to concentrate. Sleeping enough, taking breaks, taking time in nature. Think of them as fuels for our attention.
Chasing Life podcast host Dr. Sanjay Gupta says self-care is the first step in avoiding distraction. He says it can also improve our attention span. So can planning to do the hardest work in front of you at the time of day that you tend to be most focused. Gupta says to also be aware of unconscious distractions and make them intentional.
For example, instead of reaching for your phone when you hear a ping, say, I'll answer that text in 30 minutes after I finish this step.
And when you're getting a project done, be aware of thoughts that distract you. He says not to dwell on them, write them down instead.
Jotting those other to-do list items down can actually help offload them from our brains and keep you focused.
Gupta says to also keep a tidy workspace. He says research shows clutter can have a negative impact on executive function and mental health. And finally, think of a large task in front of you as a series of smaller tasks.
Studies show that our brains tend to prioritize small tasks over large ones. You will create opportunities as well to feel a sense of accomplishment, which will energize you to keep going.
Now, in our last story, we end on a lighter note. In a small warehouse in Cambodia's capital city, a group of workers sit and spin empty plastic bottles into strips, which are then turned into the bristles of an essential everyday item, broomsticks. Take a look at this story.
This small warehouse in Cambodia is transforming trash into cleaning tools. Workers there are spinning tons of plastic bottles into bristles for brooms. Since March 2023, they have upcycled around 40 tons of discarded plastic bottles. The plastic strips spun from the empty bottles are bundled on a machine, soaked in hot water to soften them, sliced into strips, and sewn onto bamboo sticks with metal wires. Running this small operation is 41-year-old Cambodian entrepreneur Has Kia. He has made it his mission to reduce plastic pollution in his community.
So far, we have gone through about 40 tons of plastic bottles, so it's quite a large amount of recycling that has gone into the broomsticks, which are very durable and can be used for a long time. The buyers are excited, and we as the manufacturer are also happy, and it is beneficial to the society, who are supporting us too. It also helps reduce pollution in the environment and encourages people to collect plastic bottles to sell to us at a higher price, which in turn could earn them a better living.
In 2010, Kia briefly worked as a conventional broomstick seller and recognized the high demand for quality brooms, which are mainly imported from Thailand and Vietnam. Kia's big idea came when he realized raw materials are cheaper at home, both the bamboo and the bottles.
Plastic bottles are more expensive overseas, and they were upcycling them. I learned that the bottles here are cheaper, together with the cost of other raw materials like bamboo sticks and the cost of labor. So I decided to make them by just designing the shape of a nice-looking broomstick.
According to Cambodia's Environment Ministry, up to a fifth of the waste in capital Phnom Penh is plastic. Single-use plastics like bags, straws, and bottles are the main culprits, clogging up landfills and waterways.
There are about 35,000 to 38,000 tons of trash generated per day in Phnom Penh. This is a huge amount of garbage consumption from about 3 million people in the city, which means one person produces about 2.6 pounds of trash per day.
Kia's team churns out 500 plastic broomsticks every day. With what seems like an endless supply of plastic, he says he doesn't see business drying up soon. He also says he's open to competition in the hopes of encouraging more recycling and to help take a bigger bite out of pollution.
And thank you very much for watching NTD Business today. That's all the stories we have. See you soon.